said, "There was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and who feasted sumptuously every day. And at his gate lay a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who longed to satisfy his hunger with what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs would come and lick his sores. The poor man died and was carried away by the angels to be with Abraham. The rich man also died and was buried. In Hades, where he was being tormented, he looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. He called out, 'Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in agony in these flames.' But Abraham said, 'Child, remember that during your lifetime you received your good things, and Lazarus in like manner evil things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. Besides all this, between you and us a great chasm has been fixed, so that those who might want to pass from here to you cannot do so, and no one can cross from there to us.' He said, 'Then, Father, I beg you to send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, that he may warn them, so that they will not also come into this place of torment.' Abraham replied, 'They have Moses and the prophets. They should listen to them.' He said, 'No, Father Abraham, but if someone goes to them from the dead, they will repent.' He said to him, 'If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead.'" The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise.
Riches may come and go, but the poor are always with us. I listened to a wonderful presentation, as you did, about being shipwrecked, and I can relate to that. There is nothing worse than being on a boat in the middle of nowhere and not having any aid. You are begging that someone's going to come along and help you, to rescue you in your time of need. When you're out there and you need someone to come along and help, you are definitely poor. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. I bet you've been in your car sometimes and you've driven down the road and you come to that stoplight at times, and there's a median, and there's this fella who's got a cardboard sign that says, "I'm a veteran, will you please give me money or food of some sort?" Might be that they're out of work. It might be that they're just saying, "Would you please give?" And it just gets you right here, because you start to wonder in your mind, do they really need the help? Are they really poor? Are they out there to take advantage of the system? Are they gaming of some sort? And then again, you ask God, "Will you please help me provide?" Sometimes you might even be in your car. You're not supposed to eat when you're in your car, but maybe you've got that sandwich or something. You just want to stick it out the window and say, "Here, have this." Being poor comes in many different varieties, and we're always asking God, who are we called to help? Today, the application is going to be wide, and it's going to be deep, and it's going to be in a place that's going to affect each and every one of us, because we are to relate to whether we are that rich man or that poor Lazarus that we hear about in the parable today. It's a splendid parable, and in it we see a rich man who has a poor man whose name is Lazarus outside of his house begging for food. He is, I guess you could say, shipwrecked. He is there and he is begging and asking for some assistance. In this parable, it's easy to get into a trap that we need to be careful, because we dare not want to say that the rich are wicked, for they are not. And also we need to be careful not to say that all who are poor are virtuous, for they are not as well. Somewhere in the middle of this chasm, we find the parable today. Before we go down into that, there is a 1918 monograph that was done by Hugo Grossman. And he plays into this ancient tale. It's Egyptian, it's Greek, it's Roman. There's always this Dante's Inferno, if you will. The C.S. Lewis of our day comes out as we see that there are 2 places. There is heaven and there is hell. And in between it, there is something that divides us from where God is. And we see this in the imaginations of so many. In Hugo's manuscript, he shows that there is a funeral for two people, one who is rich and one who is poor. And the rich man who dies has a long procession to which there is no following. And the poor man is buried under a simple mat. But as this story unfolds, we see the same thing happen. It is the poor man who is raised in heaven, and the rich man is lying in torture in hell. I really don't think God wants to torture us. I can't believe that for a minute. Is heaven real? You better believe it. Is hell real? You better believe it. What exactly is God doing with these two structures is no mystery. For hell is a place where God is not. And on this world, the one that we live on, in earth, we ask ourselves, do we have the riches that separate us from the Almighty? Or do we lay down our lives as the poor, willing to receive? You see, that's what Jesus was trying to get across to the people of his day. Jesus was talking to his audience in his day, just as he is talking to us in our day. In this parable, Jesus does something that is very unique. Out of all of his parables, we see that this is the only one where Jesus outlines and gives a proper name to an individual, Lazarus. The name itself means helped by God. Lazarus is the individual in the parable who is dying. And the rich man, whoever he is, has the ability to help and chooses not. That's what we heard about in the epistle. We heard it in the psalm. We hear it in the Old Testament. That those who have riches are not to hold it in a haughty way. They're supposed to be giving because they recognize that everything they have belongs to God anyway. I really like this parable because Jesus is teaching his people then that he is not just trying to entertain them with the story between heaven and hell, good and evil, who lives and who perishes on earth and in heaven. No. He's trying to get across to everybody that he is more than a prophet, he is the Son of God. He is here to proclaim the good news, to help those who are poor. But surely as he says this, the people of his day would not receive. He's talking to people that were tone deaf. They were clutching to the riches of their will. And I don't mean a living will as to what you leave behind, but a will that is within. It is the mortal battle between what I give to God and what I allow God to do in me. Do I clutch so tightly in fear of letting go and trusting God? It's a long story that we all know. And we know how it turns out. We must understand that in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, we must be poor. Poverty is always with us. It is our own poverty, which is the poverty of our will, knowing that we need God's help to assist us and help us get through this earthly life so that we may one day be with him in heaven. The story unfolds and the rich man is in misery. He is now looking at the part of where he wants to go into heaven and he cannot, but he sees Abraham beside Lazarus, that poor man who he neglected and did not help. And what does he say? He says, Abraham, send Lazarus so that I may be saved, that I may make right what I did wrong. And at that moment, you hear Abraham say, it's too late. You can't do anything. You should have summarized your life. You should have understood your own poverty when you lived on earth. But you did not. You refused. please send him back to my 5 brothers so that they will get the message, so that they will not have the same fate as I do. They're living the same life. They're strong-willed, they're clutching to their own wealth, and they're not helping others. They're not looking outside of themselves, outside of their own life. They're selfish. So, Abraham says, give them Moses and the prophets. And he simply replies, we got to do better than that. Can you send Lazarus, who died, back to earth so that he can get the story to them, that he can get the message to them so that they will change their ways? And Jesus, even with that, not Jesus, but Abraham says, if they wouldn't listen to Moses and the prophets, they certainly won't listen to me. So what is Jesus saying in all of this? He's basically laying his own prophecy. I'm the Son of God. I am before you. You don't believe who I say that I am. But Moses, the prophets, everyone who came before me laid witness to who I am, to bring richness of heaven here into earth. And you, in your poverty of refusing, cannot receive me. Now, there is another story where we hear about Lazarus. It comes from the Gospel of John, the 11th chapter. And in that story, there is Lazarus being raised from the dead. Do you think there's a connection between the Lucan narrative that we hear in the 16th chapter of Luke to the chapter in the story of Lazarus that is in the Gospel according to St. John? Now, the miracle hasn't happened yet. Jesus is prophesying of what's to come. He's already laying before them, this is your chance. And they are refusing. Does Jesus give us so many chances? How many is it? How many times is our ship going to overturn or stall or not be able to go forward, and we need really the help that comes from above? How often do we clutch on to our own wills and we can't let go? Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, and the parable to which he gave us is an indicator of what is to come. And when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, here's a question for you. Did they believe him at that time? Did they believe that miracle? What happened in his day was they rushed him towards his death. They cast him out. That's the danger. We have to claim our poverty. We have to claim the fact that we are poor without Christ. And we have to be willing to allow Jesus to help us and to lead us. He's given us Moses and the prophets. He's given us himself. He has come into this world to show us the way. And he reminds us that it's not our will be done, it's his will to be done. On earth as it is in heaven. Riches, well, they may come and go, but our poverty is always with us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.